and I co-hosting the show, getting excited about this every single Wednesday. Are you excited, Sharon?
That's right.
I knew
really
she'd say
excited.
that, yeah. Anyway, we are very honored to have some very honorable guests tonight. Dan Grabauskas, who is the CEO of HEART, which I want to be clear about that. It's not H-E-A-R-T, although it has heart, I know. It's H-A-R-T, and that stands for Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transit. Transportation, that's a better word. And we're going to talk about transportation tonight. We've entitled this show, The Role of Clean Energy in the Transformation of Public Transportation in Honolulu, Oahu if you like. Which brings me to our next guest, who is Roger Morton, who is the CEO, or the General Manager of Oahu Transportation, here it is again, Services.
Transit.
Okay, we're going to get a distinction on these two words. Oahu Transit Services, which works with DTS, that is the Department of Transportation Services of the City and County of Honolulu, for your buses. And we're talking about buses. And, you know, you can actually call in on this if you have questions either for Dan or Roger. The number is 296-5467. Let me say that again, 296-5467. And finally, we have Keith Block from Hawaii Energy, which is all about energy. And Keith is here to talk about the latest and greatest energy efficiency programs and projects and bennies that we can get from Hawaii Energy. Welcome again to the show, Keith.
Thanks, Jay, for inviting me. And again, I'm the Keith Block. I'm the Business Programs Operations Director at Hawaii Energy. Hawaii Energy is our energy efficiency programs for the counties of Hawaii, Honolulu, and Maui, where we provide energy financial incentives for energy efficiency projects.
Yeah. But what are you doing?
Today, I wanted to share with you a new technology a relatively new technology in air conditioning. It's called variable refrigerant flow. And that's kind of a
VRF.
VRF.
My wife and I speak a little else at the dinner table.
I'm hoping you would.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's kind of a variation on split air conditioning systems. So split air conditioning systems are the ones that have a compressor or a condenser out in the backyard, and they compress the refrigerant, send it through small little pipes into the house to the air handling system in the house. And these are commonly, you know, the Fujitsus and the Mitsubishis, so we're all kind of familiar with them. But a new take on that is, you used to have just one condenser and one air handling unit in the house. And now what you can do is have one condenser, but multiple units in the house. And the benefit of that is, with this variable refrigerant flow, you can vary the flow of refrigerant to each of those units as it's needed. So these systems are much more efficient at part load conditions.
So I could have multiple refrigerators on one system.
Essentially, that's what you got when you have an air conditioning system. You've got essentially a refrigerator in your house that you blow air across it, and that's what makes cold air.
Why not include refrigerators?
And we actually have rebates for refrigerators, but that's
it's a rhetorical question.
I thought you were just setting up the next talk we have.
Well,
right?
maybe next week. Okay, so what are you going to do for us if we do this?
Well, we have financial incentives, of course. If you're a residential customer, it's a $200 rebate when you install the system. If you're a commercial customer, that rebate is graduated. It's $250 per ton. For new construction when you're building a new facility, and it's $300 per ton when you're building or when you're retrofitting an existing facility.
So what is a new system going to cost me as a homeowner, for example?
You know, again, it varies depending on the size of the house and things like that, but you generally can expect $1,500 to $2,000 per ton. A typical house would go anywhere from 3 to 5 tons, so it can be rather expensive installation, but the incentive really is designed to get you to go to the more efficient. You know, if you're already decided that you're going to put an air conditioner in, you're going to incur a large expense, right? So the $200, although it might not sound much when you're talking about thousands of dollars to install this, it's really an encouragement to get you to go to the higher efficiency variable refrigerant flow.
Sure. And you know, some people, $200 means a lot. In any event, it's enough to get you thinking, and beyond that, it's enough to say that somebody out there likes this system. The government, you are the government, is giving us the nod, so we ought to consider it. Somebody's thought about this and they're saying it's good for us.
That's correct. That's exactly what we're hoping.
Okay, what kind of response have you had on this? How new is it, and are people, coming around in droves?
Not yet, but that's also partly what we do. The technology really is in the last 5 to 10 years. 10 years ago nobody had ever heard of it. You had just straight split systems. So this variable refrigerant flow is really about 5 years old, but that's also one of the things that we do with the programs is by providing financial incentives. We hope to expand the market, teach people that these things are out there. Many people might not know about this technology, so education as well as financial incentives.
Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on the show and telling us about it. So how does somebody actually put one foot in front of the other and get this done?
Well, you can always go to our hawaiienergy.com webpage. That's hawaiienergy, one word.com. And there you'll find all the incentives that we have, both for residential customers and also for business customers.
Okay, Dan, you have any cross-examination you want to ask him?
He's convinced me 100%.
Okay.
I'm getting my system installed on the 30th.
Oh, is that right? Okay, very good.
Okay.
Make sure you go to hawaii.com or hawaiienergy.com and get the application.
All right, well, thank you very much, Keith. We'll see you next week for more on Hawaii Energy and the negawatt moment. That's what we have here.
Thank you for inviting me, Jay.
Thank you. Okay, let's talk about our case in chief, if you will. Sorry about the legal terminology. And remember, we're calling this show the role of clean energy in the transformation of public transportation in Honolulu. I know if I worked at it, I could put that to music. And I think we ought to start with you, Dan. But to sort of ramp up to it, I just want to say that the comments you made at the Buy and Use Green Festival conference, if you will, 2 weeks ago at the convention center, the one put on by DBED, where you spoke to one of the breakout sessions. It was very nice, and it was a very rational and encouraging discussion. I really appreciate the comments you made.
Thank you.
And I wonder if you could tell our audience, what those comments were.
Sure. General about the project, or specifically about the sort of environmental benefits?
The kind of things you wanted to deliver to the crowd that day.
Well, I think one of the things that we really wanted to let folks know is that we were really looking at the comprehensive set of benefits that the rail project will bring. The most immediate and obvious one is the mobility benefit that people who travel in that corridor from West Oahu to downtown in the morning, typically commuters, and then in the afternoon heading the other direction, are stuck in awful traffic. And with the elevated guideway that we will offer to the public, 20 miles, 21 stations, basically mimicking that same corridor, they'll now have an unimpeded trip that would get them from East Kapolei to Ala Moana Shopping Center in 20 minutes. And I'm sorry, 20 stops in 42 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can also almost guarantee that, because whether it rains or there's a Middle Street merge problem, or as a couple months ago there was a chihuahua running across the H1, the impact to those types of things are not going to have they're not going to have an impact on our passengers, because we are in a fixed guideway. The other benefit to the project is certainly the residual benefit that around each station transit-oriented development will take place, and so that first you change travel patterns, and then you actually change living patterns and growth patterns, so that you allow for greater density along the corridor, so people can live, work, and play in the same area, and maybe even give up that extra automobile, which is a great thing if we could ever do that, because here in Hawaii it's the best state in the country to give up a second car. It's like putting $11,000 after taxes into your pocket if you can give up that other car.
Or a fourth car, actually, for some people.
For some people. And then there are the more global environmental benefits that we talked about, which is we're going to operate on electric power, and while that's not 100% green, obviously today, the pledge here in Hawaii is that we will get greener, that we'll be pulling greener power off the grid, and so the greener that HECO gets, the greener our project becomes. But immediately we're greener because it's many times more efficient to travel on a train that is run by electricity than to get in a single occupancy vehicle, burn fuel, and get into that awful traffic. So when you look at the project in total, it really will have a tremendous impact, taking 40,000 cars a day off the road. And we talked about a couple of statistics that I think
Go ahead.
that we have quantified in a year time that the savings of people riding the train versus what they would expend otherwise is the equivalent of 5.9 million gallons of gasoline consumed, or the equivalent of 6,500 homes use of electricity in 1 year saved by the people now using the train. So we're really excited about the mobility benefits, the environmental benefits, and the long-term sustainability that the project will bring. And then when you couple that with the great bus system that we've already got here, we think that it won't be additive, it'll really be multiplicative effects of people seeing the options to finally get out of their car and out of traffic.
Yeah, you and I were talking before the show about my own experience today,
Right.
trying to get here to the studio, and I had to go by way of the Leaky. What a trip! And I had my sort of vision of the whole island and all these intersections where everything was jammed up. And if we can avoid that, it would be a wonderment. It would be wonderful. We're going to talk more about it. We'll talk more with Dan Grabauskas and Roger Morton. We'll talk about the role of clean energy in the transformation of public transportation, one of my favorite topics, one of all of our favorite topics, right after this break. Stay there, we'll be right back. This is ThinkTech on Wednesday. You want to switch?
760 KGU.
Can you pull up the black box and make sure that your switch is on? I'm not sure it is.
Several
Maybe
accidents being
derivative
worked right now
on the sound.
downtown at Alakea and Nimitz
No,
in Pearl
no.
City
Dan.
on
Is the
Ka'ahumanu
switch
and
on?
Honolulu Road, and we've got one at Ala Moana Boulevard and
should be
Ward
up the
Avenue.
top.
Conditions are normal to Hawaii Kai and to the windward side. If you're
It's
going
on
west,
to-
the H1 slows at the airport on-ramp on the viaduct. The Moana Loa
Maybe I
slows
need
at
to
the Port Chapter
move this?
overpass.
Yeah, move it a little closer to
Inbound
your mouth,
traffic
yeah.
from the west slows at Like exit.
David, can you boost Dan Grabauskas' sound a little bit? I want you to be well heard.
Thank you. All right, so maybe I should speak up.
Now, if you move the biggest thing is moving the mic closer to your mouth.
Okay.
Okay, so now in the second quarter, we're going to talk about the input of the Energy Policy Forum on this issue. Okay, and taking it further to see
energy use and improving
The voice
energy
is so
efficiency.
familiar to me.
We're reducing Hawaii's
It gives
dependence on
goosebumps,
imported
chicken
oil
skin.
and providing a more sustainable and secure future for Hawaii. For more information, visit hawaiisenergyfuture.com. Hawaii, the state of clean energy, is also brought to you by the State Energy Office of the Department of Business, Economic Development, and Tourism. How can we secure a better future for Hawaii? One way is clean energy. And the State Energy Office is steering Hawaii to that clean energy future. Hawaii is rich with natural renewable resources, the sun, the wind, the ocean, and the land. And they are all being tapped to meet Hawaii's clean energy initiatives to generate electricity, create jobs, spur economic growth, and reduce our dependence on imported foreign oil. To learn more,
There's a
visit
future for you in this.
energy.hawaii.gov.
You thought Bill Brennan was good.
Now back to ThinkTech Wednesday on AM 760 KGU. Here once again is your host, Jay Fidell.
Thank you, Jack Waters. Thank you, Leah Rodriguez. And thank you, Patrick Leonard at KGU for helping us put this show on. We're ThinkTech, we're live, we're back. It's Wednesday in Hawaii. the state of clean energy, okay? And we're talking with Dan Grabauskas of HART, H-A-R-T, and Roger Morton of the Oahu Transit Services. I guess that's OTS.
That's it.
In DTS,
Are you
in the
not
CNC.
DTS? You're an authority into yourself, aren't you?
Well, we're sort of we're an authority. We're not an authority, but we're a contractor.
Independent.
We're in to DTS to the city.
Okay, we're going to cover that.
We're an instrumentality.
Okay.
You look like a nice person, though.
I'm glad to hear that, Jay.
Let's talk to Sharon for a minute, because the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum has some input on transportation and transformation and clean energy. Sharon, what has the Energy Policy Forum been doing and thinking on this issue?
Well, we started in 2007, I think, thinking that transportation was really important in terms of the energy mix, that a third of our energy was really being used in transportation, and we're not doing anything about it. So we did a study in 2009, and just focusing on the public transportation, what we found was that people were willing to travel on the bus, but only 20% had traveled on the bus. Another 30% said, yeah, if you got more reliable, more consistent, better stops, that we would travel. And then whole 50% said, no, never, ever. So I think we were looking at how might you transform.
Where's your microphone? How can you do a radio show without a microphone?
Here's my mic. Oh, where did it go?
Much better.
All right. So how can you transform our whole bus system? And then comes rail. We also asked about rail or transportation in terms of long travel periods. And people said, well, it was close to where I lived. 50% said, yeah, I'll take the rail. So I think looking at those kinds of consumer attitudes and preferences, what might we do in terms of how we can get people to be more energy efficient? Because the more people that go on rail and on the bus, the less they actually use in their cars, as both of you were saying. And I really liked what you were saying about how you're looking at its integration of bus and the rail, and possibly walking and other kinds of non-mobile transportations.
Right.
If you want to respond to that, and how might we be looking at the future in terms of those kinds of consumer preference, because you need people to ride the bus and the rail.
And Dan and I are both we're both committed to making this as seamless a system as possible, a best system that we can have. Some components of it might be bus, other components might be rail. There's no magic silver bullet in any of this. All of the things have to come together: the TODs, the energy efficiency, the integration of the modes. But we're both committed to working together to make a great system for Hawaii.
That's good. And how might you get more of the community involved and engaged in knowing that this is happening, and how they might be more a player in using the bus and using rail and seeing that it's the future?
Well, there's lots of forums that go on. Some of them the elected officials have. The mayor's having a number of forums right now. I think there's one tonight. And rail and bus are both a big part of those forums. I know Dan does many forums in the community. We go out into the community with DTS. There's lots of different things. There's Alelo shows that we do. But I think the most important thing is that the two organizations, HART and the bus, are really committed to not be competitors, or not be bus and not be rail, but to be a bus rail system.
Right. I mean, I think Roger says it perfectly, and one of the other things that we get from people is sort of the practical questions of how will it work, and we're committed to the real practical aspects of it from the perspective of a customer. So we're working together already to have one fare card that you'll be able to use that'll get you past to both, one website for information, one phone call to one phone number to call if you have information that you want to get. And so we're really trying to say, from the customer's perspective, what do we want to see? And yes, we hope to grab a lot of great passengers that live in that quarter or half mile around each station, but it's really the connectivity that the bus is going to be able to offer. And not only is there a great bus network today, but if a number of the bus routes that sort of run that long haul, from East Kapolei into downtown, could now be substituted for by the train, and those buses could be redeployed to either serve as more rapid feeder into the stations, or even to other parts of the island that are looking for more service. That, to me, is a real, where I say that you get the plus. You really get the multiplying effect.
So is your planning working on that, how you feed the bus system feeds and they have more stops? Because I think that was one of the concerns, is that there are not enough stops, so I have to walk a long way.
Here's an interesting factoid, is that 95% of our population right now are within 1/4 mile of a bus stop on this island. So we have a very, very fine-grained bus system now. That provides the primary access to the system, is the bus stop. And we will be converting some of our routes, not all of them, but we'll be converting some of the routes so that they can connect better with the rail system. And I think that we have a big jump on many communities that have gone down this road. Why? Because we have already an outstanding transit ridership. Dan comes from Boston, which is one of the few cities in America that actually exceeds us in the community's ridership in a community. But we're fifth in the country. And
Fifth in what?
Fifth in per capita transit ridership. Ridership divided by population. And all of the other, well, obviously we all know New York City is the #1 city. Washington, Boston, San Francisco, but then Honolulu comes up. And so that surprises a lot of people that we have such a high ridership habit already that's developed here. And that ridership habit will transfer. People will vote with their feet, and they'll take the most convenient route for them. And for many of our riders, those on the west side and those through Pearl City and Aiea, that's going to involve a rail trip too. A bus trip, maybe, and a rail trip.
But you have a problem here, and that is a lot of people go by the violin lesson conundrum.
Many trips.
I'm going to tell you about the violin lesson conundrum.
We're all ears.
I have a daughter, she's 9 years old. Okay, in the past I would take her in my car and we would drive to her violin lesson, which is up on a hill somewhere and not near the backbone of transportation at all. Okay, now in the future we want the transportation to be integrated and we want the rail to draw the ridership, okay? But I still have to get my daughter to the violin lesson, which is up a hill somewhere, okay? So in order to do that, if you want me on the rail system, you've got to provide a bus line that will go to the violin lesson. You haven't heard this before, have you?
And we're committed. We're going to do it.
But by the way, Roger, do you play the violin?
Not for a long time. Only at my staff meetings.
So there's a challenge here because whatever the bus system is now, okay, it's going to have to fill that gap to get the riders to go on Dan's system. I mean, Dan's part of the system. So do you contemplate that going forward?
Well, as Dan sort of suggested, that there are many of our routes are long routes that parallel the rail system. And so we're going to have an immediate ability to shift some of those resources to serve the violin route. And that will be part of our transformation. Now, not all the bus system will change, but we know that the combined bus and rail system will be a better system and a system that more people utilize. Will everybody use it? Of course not. We're not going to all give up our cars. We carry something like 7 or 8% of all the island trips that occur right now. But when you get to a place like downtown, we carry a much larger share than that. That's an island-wide number. But if you just looked at how do I get to work and those types of trips, the numbers are much higher than that. And I think that transportation is a complicated business. And there's many segments, and there's many different markets, and there's many different constituencies in public transportation. Those are, so we're going to end with a better system, with more bus service than we have now, and with a very fast, system from the west side into town.
Well, this reminds me of a comment that we made, that we were all making in our previous show this afternoon, which dealt with the Foundation for the Arts. And we concluded that a great state deserves great art. No surprise. And then we talked about our program on housing tomorrow. I hope you guys come down. It's going to be something. I mean, there's $3 billion worth of housing being represented in this panel. I mean, my God. I mean, could you eat a meal? You know. Anyway, so then we said, well, a great state deserves great housing, don't you think? And then our program on June 27th at the Plaza Club upstairs is about healthcare. So we said, you know, well, a great state deserves great healthcare too. But finally, and today, most important, right now, most important, don't you think, Sharon? A great state deserves great transportation.
And we want to develop a transportation paradise and become the model for transportation.
So what this all suggests to me, trying to integrate the remarks that Sharon made and you guys, how you responded, is that clean energy is a great challenge. And we've got to keep the public on it. Because, I mean, you know already that the public is fickle. And the public changes its mind, and you have to, you know, you have to maintain the message all the time if you want the public to follow along. And it's just the way it is. So it seems to me that not only do you guys have the possibility of using and advancing the notion of clean energy in these transportation projects, but you also are a way of actually communicating with the public about the value of clean energy. You're a lightning rod for clean energy, coming and going. And you could help Sharon, and she needs help. Anyway, we'll help her during the break. For now, we're going to take a short break. We're here with Dan Grabauskas and Roger Morton. We're doing transportation and the role of clean energy and transformation of transportation. We'll be right back after this break.
You never know what comes out of it.
760 KGU.
Just want to check that. Is that fan on? We should
No,
turn it
no,
off. It's
I
getting in
took
the
it out
mic.
because-
Been closed earlier today because of a fatal
If it's blue,
accident
it's
on
on.
Country Club Road. It
Okay,
affected
good.
traffic in both directions. It's typical going east to Hawaii Kai, really slow right now going west. H1 is stop and go back to the airport on-ramp on the viaduct. Number 1 Lewis slows right after Middle Street. If you're coming into town from the west, the slowdown starts at the Middle Street merge.
If we had incandescent in here, we'd get such a ration. Okay, we talk about it's made more difficult. Be careful, you've got half an hour to pick on you next. First, I want to talk about the buses. Talk about the alternative types of fuels for the buses.
When you talk about innovation in buses.
I want to talk about Billy Canoy's thing, which actually was his predecessor, about free buses. Ask you if that's ever possible.
I'd probably say no, but
Okay, but there's always tomorrow. And possibly.
Hold on your wallet.
Well, you know, I mean, it's like the opera. We can't pay for the opera by the gate. You know, the gate never pays all the expenses. So if
With the Kahiava Wind Farm on Maui and the Kahuku and Kawailoa Wind Farms on Oahu, First Wind is pleased to create clean, local sources of energy powered by Hawaii's trade winds. Understanding our unique environment and host culture, First Wind develops projects that support local communities and provide net benefits to native wildlife, embracing the concept of caring from Mauka to Makai. Hu Kamakani, may the wind blow towards a sustainable future for Hawaii's people. For more information, visit firstwind.com.
ThinkTech Energy Wednesday is also brought to you by Hawaii Energy. Hawaii Energy is a ratepayer-funded conservation and efficiency program administered by SAIC under contract with the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, serving the islands of Hawaii, Lanai, Maui, Molokai, and Oahu.
Now back to ThinkTech Wednesday on AM 760 KGU. Here once again is your host, Jay Fidell.
You're on.
Okay, we're on. This is ThinkTech, back from our break, having a great time during the break. and we're here with Dan Grabauskas and Roger Morton. Dan is the CEO of HART, the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation.
Excellent.
Okay, we're learning the acronyms. And Roger Morton is the General Manager of Oahu Transit Service, which is a contractor for the Department of Transportation Services of the City and County of Honolulu. And those two guys are friendly and getting friendlier. What can I say? And in the future, you know, they will be working together on many things, and it's clear at this point. I also want to say that this show, if you hadn't noticed, is being sponsored by DBED, by Hawaiian Electric, and by Hawaii Energy. So it's really totally an energy show, especially when Sharon Moriwaki is here.
I just make sure it is.
I also want to say that we broadcast on KGU Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. We also we stream all of our talk shows 2 to 3 o'clock p.m. and 4 to 5 o'clock p.m. Monday through Friday on Ustream and Spreaker, and those links are available on our website, ThinkTech Hawaii. We broadcast as well on Olelo and on OC16. You can't get rid of us.
And you wouldn't want to. And you wouldn't want to.
And you wouldn't want to. Okay, anyway, so can we turn to you, Roger, and ask you about, you know, I mean, we're in energy now, and energy has so many possible fuels going on. I mean, just let me list ones that come to mind. Biofuel, electric buses, hydrogen buses, propane, I know you got that. You got articulated buses, that's not a fuel, but it's got something to do with it. What kind of buses are in our future? And what are you migrating to with the bus system?
Well, we have spent a lot of effort in looking at different alternatives than pure diesel. I would say, first of all, another alternative fuel is clean diesel. You know, the diesel that we burn now, ultra low sulfur diesel, emits probably 1/100th of the emissions that our previous generations of buses did. That's a combination of both better engine technology and just better fuel that we buy from the refineries now. So, you know, the folklore is that the air that comes out of an LA transit bus is cleaner than the air that goes into it at this point.
That's very interesting.
But we have spent a good effort on trying hybrid technologies. We have 4 brand new systems that we're ordering right now for 4 more articulated buses. These are a little different than our current generation of hybrids, and we're hoping that we can stretch the envelope. We get about 35 or 36% fuel efficiency from our hybrid buses. That's up and beyond what a regular diesel bus would be.
Is that the same as the articulated? What is articulated?
Well, articulated, it just means it's a 60-foot long. It's a bendy bus in the
Oh,
middle.
the bendy ones.
But it's economies of scale,
Yeah.
that's really what it's saying.
So we're getting 37% more fuel efficiency on that bus. That still sounds pretty lousy when I tell you what the miles per gallon is, which is about 4. But remember, there's 55 people on that vehicle. Now, the buses that we're currently buying right now do it a slightly different way, and just the technology keeps rolling along. So we're going to try something called a series technology. Right now we do a parallel technology, and the difference is that we use the mechanical energy from the engine to sometimes drive the vehicle and to run our accessories. And in a series one, we're going to go strictly electric. So everything on the bus is going to be electrically operated. The motors that turn the wheels. We will have an engine that produces electricity, but other than that, it's like a diesel train. It's just one generator that generates power. So we're hoping that we'll get up to 45 or 50% efficiency by doing that. Now we have some other things that are maybe even more exciting. We're going to try.
I love this conversation. I want to hear this stuff. Everybody wants to hear this. Can you imagine the number of things that you could install using, you know, information technology? We'll talk about it. Go ahead. Why?
But we're also we have a program with the United States Department with the Federal Transit Administration to demonstrate a new technology for powering a bus, and that's a turbine bus. We're going to power it with propane, and it'll run a micro turbine, which is usually used to generate auxiliary power for buildings and for hospitals and for the military. we're putting that into a vehicle, into a transportation vehicle, and the benefits are that we should have a carbon footprint that's maybe one third or one half the size of even our hybrid buses. We're hoping to get more fuel efficiency. We're going to be testing it for the nation, so that's going to be part of our responsibility. Is going to be to keep track of it very carefully, so we can report it back to the rest of the cities. Another advantage of it is it's a quieter technology, and for our resort areas, for our apartment areas, our condo areas, really lots of areas in Hawaii. If we can get the sound of our buses down to a lower level, that's going to be a great benefit for the entire community. So this is an exciting project.
But you know what you need, Roger? Money. We want you to have all the money you need to put in all the high-tech things in these buses. We want this bus system to be exciting in every ride.
We have a great crew that does some exciting things. We have apps that we've built. We have apps
about when the bus is coming.
We'll tell you when the bus is coming.
That's great.
We have GPS on all of our vehicles, and we have some world-class apps that, I'm glad we're on the radio because we're not doing a good enough job of telling people. But if you really want a good app for your iPhone or for your Android device, go to the App Store and look for Da Bus, D-A-B-U-S. Da Bus.
I wonder what state that comes from.
It's a great, and I got to give credit for that. That application was developed by an employee at the city's Department of Information and Technology, and he's done we're entering it in national competitions because it's a world killer. And I'm proud that the city was able to do it in-house using their own employees.
Is this with the Code for America organization?
Well,
they were here last year doing that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's where it really started. I actually gave a presentation to that group at a hackathon, and the outgrowth of the hackathon was to spark this employee, Andy Yip's, interest in doing something, and he took it upon himself and did it, and now it's an endorsed app by the city.
That's great. But you know what this shows? It's very interesting. I was going to ask you if you're going to have these electronic signs on every street corner that would tell you, when the bus is coming and all the information you'd ever want to know about that. But that would cost a lot of money, actually.
Less than you think.
Yeah.
Really?
Say again?
Yeah, less than you think.
You're going to do it?
Well, we have a program where we're going to try to work with some third parties to see if we can get a good system going. It's going to be a pilot. It's not a rollout of any
So you
kind.
would have bus coming like they do in the train stations.
That's for the people who don't have the apps.
We have some of those now.
You do?
Yeah, we have a few of those up in strategic places like the UH right now.
So, there was an issue here a few months ago about the, assets that might have gone to the bus system being diverted to other systems and buses taken offline and service being cut back. What was the reason? What was the process? And where are we now on that problem?
Well, I'll speak from the bus side. We are funded by the City Council annually, and most of that money comes from the general fund and from Transportation Fund. And Hart's money comes from a different stream. From what happened, it happened, I think, we had an economy that was not producing the same amounts of government revenues that we had gotten used to, and the mayors had to make some choices, and that was a political choice that was made. The Mayor Caldwell right now is committed to making those restorations, and we have done partial restorations so far, and I can tell people that our next series of restorations will be done on this Sunday, May 26th. We're going to put in a second increment. A third increment of restorations will be in August. Public transportation, there's no beating around the bush. It's an expensive enterprise to run. My company has 1,850 employees. It's a big operation. So it is hard, I think, for any elected official to wrestle with how do we fund this? How much should the passengers pay? How much should the taxpayers pay? How much will the federal government pay? Those are all really tough issues here, and they're tough issues everywhere where public transportation is
So what is the subsidization by the city versus people paying? So can you increase the rates, your fees that you charge on the bus, or is that a no-no when people ride the bus?
Well, I think those issues are always under consideration. No one likes to do it. Raising fares can hurt people, and some people are very dependent upon public transportation. The council has passed a policy ordinance which says that in Honolulu, the passengers should pay somewhere between 27 to 33% of the operating cost. And that's a council policy declaration, and that number, we look at that number very closely. Right now, this year, we'll end the year at about 30% of the
Total cost.
But we were talking in the break about Billy Kenoi and the Big Island, now known as the island of Hawaii.
the Big
It
Island
used to
of
be the
Hawaii.
Big Island, but
No Big Island
political
anymore.
correctness
Hawaii.
requires that we call it the island of Hawaii. Anyway, so what he did was he made the buses free, and this was really a wonderful thing, and people loved that. And after the break, I'd like to ask you what the prospect is that we make the buses free. And fair is fair. I also want to ask you when we're getting self-driving buses. If Google can do it for cars, why can't it do it for buses? And why can't it do it for trains, too?
In fact, trains will be driverless, and I'll be happy to talk about
okay.
Oh, that would be great to
Well,
hear
I can
about
hardly
that.
wait till we get back from the other side of the break. We'll be right back. This is ThinkTech, and it's Energy Wednesday. We'll be right back.
Oh yeah, that's the future. We have to hear about the future. This is coming up.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
Up on the North Shore, there's an accident at the North Shore Marketplace. A car apparently struck the building. If you're going west from town, the H1 slows at the airport exit on the viaduct. The Oahu slows at the Fort Shafter overpass. The Windward Drive is good, although there is an accident over in Kaneohe. It's on Kamehameha Highway at Waikalua Road. The drive east to Hawaii Kai is fine with no slowdown yet on the freeway.
They paint a line on the road, and they got an optical scanner that follows it. But you do have to make sure that you don't hit anybody. So there still has to be somebody to push the brake.
But because you know the route, it's not that complicated to get where you need to go. It's just the hitting people.
Hitting people is the problem.
The reason, and I can do it because again, it's an elevated guideway. I have no traffic, I have no pedestrians, so we get up and down.
Right, you know where you're going.
But one of the big cost drivers to operate a system, like Roger Morton, what percentage of your overall budget is personnel?
76%.
So the fact is that we'll be able to operate our entire system. It's a much more extensive system, but 850 drivers. It's anticipated that it'll be not quite 300 people that will operate the entire rail system.
Not as
Including
labor
maintenance,
intensive.
including maintenance and everything else, because we'll have 80 rail cars.
ThinkTech Radio is also brought to you by InmoB. Since its inception in 2007, InmoB has grown to become the world's largest independent mobile advertising network, serving over 100 billion mobile ads to date. It has built its product in parts of the world where the mobile phone is not just a screen, it's the only screen. After launching in the US and Europe in 2010, InmoB has more than doubled its global network from 7 billion to 60 billion impressions monthly, and has offices on 4 continents, in Bangalore, Johannesburg, and London, in Nairobi, New York, and Paris, in San Francisco, Seoul, Singapore, and Tokyo. InmoB. ThinkTech Hawaii is a Hawaii nonprofit corporation organized in the year 2000. Its purpose is to raise public awareness about the importance of technology, energy, agriculture, and globalism to the diversification and expansion of our economy. We do this by television shows on community television and on OC16, by newspaper articles, and by our ThinkTech radio series on KGU 760 AM. We also do it by panel programs and events, including our monthly luncheon programs with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. ThinkTech, working to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check us out at thinktechhawaii.com.
Now back to ThinkTech Wednesday on AM 760 KGU. Here once again is your host, Jay Fidell.
Okay, we're moving into the last part of our show with Dan Grabauskas of HART and Roger Morton of Oahu Transit Services and Sharon Moriwaki from the Energy Policy Forum, who is watching all of us in our use of energy, clean energy only, please.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
pleased to see we're using less energy.
So before the break, we were talking briefly with Roger about the apps that actually have helped in helping passengers with the bus system. And if you could flash that on our video camera, Roger, we just take a picture of it. And if anybody wants to see this, just tune into thinktechhawaii.com and look for the Ustream live stream, and you will see.
Can you
Yeah,
get it
there it
closer?
is. There
Yeah,
it is.
there
Yeah,
it is.
there it is. Beautiful app. So, I mean, I can see the same kind of app, Dan, with the train on it. It's coming soon.
Absolutely. And and we hope that in the peak period we'll be able to serve people with our buses. Our trains coming through the station every 3 minutes. So one of the things that makes for a really great public transit system is if you can get to the frequency of service where you actually don't even need a schedule. That's really the dream. And
Yes.
what's great is that the system we're building is going to be that system. It's going to allow you to, if you get to the platform and you've just missed a train and it's 7 o'clock in the morning, the peak period of travel, 3 minutes later you're going to have another train.
We have to keep talking to you as we go down. Don't forgive me for this, but as we go down the track. I like to see this unfold. It's really going to change all our lives, as you mentioned at the conference a couple of weeks ago. But going to the notion of technology on this, so Google has a self-driving car, or it's working on it, and people have seen it and talked about it, and it actually does what Google wants it to do. Of course, there are legal issues. The lawyers are all waiting in the wings, but now this would be good for buses, wouldn't it, Roger?
Well, we may have to, we're pretty close to the curbs, we're around a lot of people, so I think you'll do the cars first before you do the buses, only because we're so close to big crowds. I suspect that the Google stuff will roll out on expressways first. And then at some point, maybe on local streets later.
And Dan is already heading in that direction.
We're already planning. We're going to be the first driverless system in the United States. If people don't know that about the system, because we are in an elevated guideway all by ourselves, we don't have to worry about the safety of other vehicles or pedestrians. We can actually operate our trains without a driver on board, and it's going to be completely automated from a central control system.
Do you know how frustrating that is to all those people and kids who grew up wanting to be train engineers? I bet you're in this business, at least in part, because you wanted to be a train engineer when you were a kid, just as Roger is in the business because he wanted to be a bus operator.
Well, I actually wanted to be a firefighter, but I didn't make it. So, going to be plenty of great jobs at the Operation Control Center and the maintenance and storage facility for the project. But it is exciting that we can dedicate to the customer amenities, by investing in those rather than other things. And the system is going to be, really cutting edge for the United States. It'll be about the 25th driverless system in the world, but we're going to be privileged to be the first in the U.S.
Wow.
That's incredible. And it reminds me of a trip I took on one of these big cruise liners that park at Aloha Tower, and you think you go up to the bridge of one of those things and you find all these big wheels and something out of the 19th century and Captain Bligh, whatnot. In fact, the actual mechanism to steer this huge, big 700, 800, 900 more length ship it's at the size of a PC, and you have a little directional thing there that steers it one way or the other, and so you can sit there, relax yourself, have a cup of coffee, and steer this huge ship. And I'm sure that's so on the big oil tankers and so forth. So I think what we have here is there's going to be a job somewhere for one engineer, right? And he's going to sit in the headquarters somewhere, and he's going to watching buttons and dials and controlling all this.
Just not on board the train.
Yeah, with a little computer about the size of an iPad.
It's a pretty sophisticated system.
Yeah, that's great. And you save labor. You're going to avoid all the labor that would otherwise be involved Too bad, though. There will be a whole generation of kids that never know the joy of dreaming that they can be railroad engineers.
There's still lots on the mainland and then the freight business. So.
In the freight business.
What are some of the jobs, the green jobs now that will be coming on board with the transportation system, the new one?
Well, I mean, again, I try to remind folks that the system itself really is green. Just the fact that we're offering an opportunity for the equivalent of the two-car train is the equivalent of 5 40-foot buses in terms of the number of passengers we hold. So can you imagine the fact that they will have that number of people, a couple hundred people that will be able to get on board one train and travel very efficiently. So the system itself is very green, and there are going to be jobs certainly while we're constructing this. Where our maintenance and storage facility we want to have as a LEED certified. We're focusing on silver right now. I'd like us to get the gold, but at least a silver certification. And
where's that going to be?
It's going to be right adjacent to Leeward Community College. There's
At the end of the track.
Yeah, but people often ask me, why are you building the first 10 miles out in West Oahu? And the real simple answer is that we needed a large site to put our maintenance and storage facility where the trains will go to be cleaned and maintained.
Try to get that across from Ala Moana Center.
Well, you're not going to get 43 acres of land all in one place, which is what we needed there. It's really enough for the price that we'd want to try to pay, and a lot of people in these new high-rises are not going to want to look down into a big train yard. So,
yeah. Well, one thing we should talk about is the status of it. What you mentioned in the Green Conference that it was going to be done in 2019.
That's right.
Which really made my heart go a little faster just to hear that. But what does it look like between here and there? What are your big challenges, and how good an estimate is that?
So as you know, and your listeners may know, we had a challenge in the state Supreme Court about one of the permits that was issued to us that halted construction temporarily out in West Oahu. So we've been working to meet the obligations of that case, and what we expect is that we'll be back in construction this fall. Making that assumption, people will see a lot of activity in the next couple of years. The first 10 miles from East Kapolei to Aloha Stadium is slated to open in mid to late 2017, and then in 2019 the full 20 miles, the remaining 10 miles will open. So there's a lot of activity that people are going to see. The rail cars typically arrive and start what they call burning into service, basically testing those about a year or so in advance. So people say, well, when will I actually see the first trains actually running? And it's probably going to be in 2016 that you'll see the trains operating on the portions of the guideway, not for service, but for testing of the trains. And then the service will begin in 2017, as they say, for that first 10 miles. And 2019 does not seem that far away when I realize all the work we've got ahead of us.
Just a thought, though. Hawaii has, in its history, has problems with big projects. It's just a cultural thing in Hawaii. And when this gets done, it will teach us that we shouldn't have problems with big projects.
That's
that
what
we
we're
should
hoping.
feel more confident about it, that we can undertake big projects. So you're actually at the spearhead of a whole, I said transportation, a transformation of transportation. It's more than just a transformation of transportation.
Well, it's true. I mean, we've been saying, internally, as an organization, we've been planning for this for 40 years, right? There's been a lot of conversation about what should be the option. And we're about to transform into a construction company, the likes of which has never been seen, because this is the single largest public works project in the state's history, $5.2 billion. And then very shortly thereafter, we're going to transform again as an organization into supervising the operations of our first rail system. So there's a lot of firsts and a lot of big in this project.
You love your job?
Love it, and I love Hawaii, and I'm so happy to call it home, and I'm especially happy in the wintertime. but every day. It's really
over
great.
time, you won't even be able to tell you have a Boston accent.
Yeah, well, it's every so often it slips out.
So Roger, what about a free bus like Billy Kenoi does on the Big Island?
Well, free buses have been looked at in a lot of places, and most places, Big Island was one of the very few places that actually tried it. The reality is it costs a lot to operate a bus. There's no bus line in America, and very few in the world that really make a profit. So there's always some level of subsidy to make the buses competitive. And that's justified because the buses solve a lot of the externality problems that automobiles cause. So there's a social mitigation there in operating transit. But free transit, from my perspective as a general manager, I think a fare is needed for both fiscal reasons and also because I think people respect something that they pay to use more so than if they expect it and get it free. So I'm personally, I've never been a big fan of free transit, and I think I don't think we'll see it on this island I don't think we'll see free transit on this island.
Okay, but maybe we can have cheap transit anyway.
Well, and I'll just say, transportation ain't free.
Yeah.
Even the roads cost money, and so they have to be paid for.
Neither is transformation. It's not free. The role of clean energy in transforming our public transportation system in Oahu. Dan Grabauskas, Roger Morton, Sharon Moriwaki, and me. We love this show. Thank you so much,
Thanks,
gentlemen.
Jay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Did we get in just before you heard that, or you didn't hear it? At the last syllable, it was over.
That's great. Thank you, guys.
Very nice discussion. A little bit too humorous, though.